Coach rankings. All right. So here's how it goes. All right. These are specifically for how the season has gone so far. These are not, so when we're talking about Tom Izzo, we're talking about how has Tom Izzo been right now this season. We're not talking about how was Tom Izzo before or anything like that. We're talking about right now. How is Tom Izzo? How is Matt Painter? How is Kevin Willard? All those guys. How are we going to rank these guys and make it happen? So we'll go ahead and we'll let Russ start us off with this one. Russ, I think I know who your number one guy is, but just go ahead and say it to confirm.
Of course, it's Matt Painter. Of course, I'm going to be the homer. We had this discussion last year after the season as to what does Matt Painter have to do to be coach of the year, and I don't think he can be, because when you're expected to be at the top and you stay at the top, it's not like, oh, you went from a basement team to a contender, but they're the only team to go undefeated in non-conference in the last 2 years of all Power Six programs, and now they've done it a third straight year, and they've scheduled a gauntlet. So, and he's changed the way he coaches. Right, the guards have played a lot better this year. He put TKR in the starting lineup. He put Lance Jones as a transfer in the starting lineup. That was a huge get, and I think that he's really improved this year. And I think that this could be the year he breaks through.
Yeah, I thought about a couple other guys, but at the end of the day, I just looked at it and I said I have to go Painter. He has done the best coaching job so far this year. Everybody will use their excuses of Zach Edey's just tall. I don't respect your opinion if you have that opinion. I do understand it because I had it last year, but this year I'm like, no, that's not the thing. If you actually watch the games and see how it is, Zach Edey is really, really good. And there's a lot of good coaching that Matt Painter does in the games that I think goes unnoticed, but he's been really good this year. So Spartan Dog, you think we're right or you got a different opinion?
Yeah, I thought of maybe putting some different guys here, just to be, different and quirky, little manic pixie dream girl. But yeah, I mean, Painter is by far been the best coach in the conference so far this season. I don't think there's any debate.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, Spartan Dog, give us your number two.
My number two. So I am going to get a little manic pixie dream girl here. I'm going to go with Fred Hoiberg and Nebraska. I think he's finally, last season you finally started to see the germ of what he was trying to do there. And I think this year it's coming to fruition a little more. They have suffered some injuries. That's gonna hurt them as they get kind of more into conference play. Their awesome center, Rank Mast, I believe is out for the year, if not an extended period of time. So that's definitely going to be killer for them as they try to, make the tournament. And, that's not something Nebraska ball does a lot, is make the tournament. So, this early in the season, they've had a bit of an easy schedule, but like Russ said, you can only play who's in front of you, and they've taken care of business. So I think Fred Hoiberg's done phenomenal.
Yeah, I agree. I would have had Fred Hoiberg number one if they could have kept it closer with Creighton or even beat Creighton earlier this year. So I know this is not really all that interesting because we're all the same right now, and I'm assuming Russ is probably going to be the same. But I can't sing the praises of Fred Hoiberg enough. Russ, you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I don't have really much to add. I've got Fred Hoiberg number two as well. I think at this point it's very impressive what he's done, especially you go back to about 2/3 of the way through last season when it was like maybe he's done, and he's just flipped the 180 and done a really good job there in Nebraska.
I agree. All right, who's your number three then, Russ?
So my number three is actually Greg Gard. I think he's done a good job having that team in position to. Right now, I'd put them as the second or third best team in the conference. And to do that from a position where most people viewed them as like maybe more of a middle of the road, like a 6-7 team in the conference, I think that's really good so far.
I agree. I think Greg Gard is very good. I'm actually going to go Brad Underwood, though. One thing that Brad Underwood has done this season is I think he has improved the culture at Illinois a lot. I feel like, and Greg Waddell over on Sleepers talks about it a lot, but like the body language and stuff like that, I do buy into that stuff. Like they look like a team who is more excited about each other getting wins, and I do come down on them a bit when they get down, like in that Tennessee game. They kind of gave up a little bit, but it's not a perfect culture. But I feel like the culture has gotten better. This is a much better team than they were last year, even though they have some of the same guys. So I'm gonna give Brad Underwood some love and make him number 3. So Spartan Dog, who's your number 3 guy?
I'm gonna give it to Greg Gard. And I think the reasons for that are pretty clear, right? Russ basically covered all the bases for me, right? This was a team that was expected middle of the pack, right? Maybe a year away. Maybe they needed to hit the transfer portal a little harder, but I think that they have done I think Greg Gard's done a phenomenal job.
Yeah, he has. Who's your number 4 then?
My number 4, I'm going to go with Chris Holtmann, actually. Everyone loves to joke about Chris Holtmann. The January slump, the constant selling of we're a year away. But, I still think he's a pretty solid coach. And I do think that this year is the year he can finally kind of break through that glass ceiling and kind of make some noise in March.
He very well could. I'll believe it when I see it, but he very well could. I'm going to go with Greg Gard as my number 4 for a lot of the same reasons you guys gave. Just doing a great job this season. All right, Russ, who's your number 4?
I got to password protect my notes, man, because I've got Chris Holtmann number 4 as well. I think, if you look at staring 11-2 in the face going into the new year, I think that's a really, really good start for this Ohio State team. Even with different guys leading the way than you maybe expected, Roddy Gale kind of coming out of nowhere. When you have a player that makes that leap, that speaks volumes of a coach's ability to develop talent, and I think he's done a great job this year.
Maybe I'm just too low on Chris Holtmann, but it's probably the pessimist in me. Who's your number 5, Russ?
So number 5, I actually have Brad Underwood there at number 5. I think that, yes, his body language has been better. The team has looked better, but like you said, they've got to, I'm a fan of X's and O's, right? I'm a Purdue fan. I'm a Painter fan. When you're not drawing up plays well, when you're not getting assisted buckets, that can cost you the games like Marquette and like Tennessee. And I think they're still just kind of one step away from putting it all together.
Yeah, good point. Having a good season, but definitely things to improve on. I think actually my next guy is going to be Chris Collins. I think Collins, that Chicago State loss was obviously bad, but I mean, it's been the only team to defeat Purdue this year. So I feel like he has to be in the top 5. 9-2, doing really well. Yes, they have Boo Booey, who probably could be employed elsewhere, as Spartan Dog pointed out for us. But at the end of the day, this is still a guy who, 2 years ago was pretty much set to be fired, and then he won Big Ten Coach of the Year. So, and he seems to be doing really, really well again this year. So I'm gonna go with Collins at number 5. Spartan Dog, who's your number 5?
See, this is tough because now we're kind of getting into this might be a bigger picture discussion about the Big Ten Conference this year. For right now, I'll agree with you, JR. I'll go with Chris Collins, right? I mean, that Chicago State loss is a bad loss. It's an inexcusable loss. I mean, right. Chicago State has been such a joke in college basketball. Mark Titus has been actively campaigning to become the coach of Chicago State. So that's not what you want as a program. But, like you said, they're the only team to beat. They're the only team to beat Purdue. I'm sure they're going to kick the shit out of Michigan State like they always do. So I got Chris Collins. And then at number 6, I'll go with Brad Underwood. I've been pretty underwhelmed with Illinois this year, and the Big Ten as a whole really is a basketball conference outside of Purdue. Brad Underwood is a guy who I don't think I would enjoy hanging out with.
The hangout factor brought him real low.
Bodied. Brad.
Yeah, would I want to get a beer with Brad Underwood? No, I would not. But yeah, I mean, you can't argue with results. So I'll put Brad Underwood here.
That's our next rankings. Who do I want to get a beer with? the most out of all the coaches. Oh man, I'm not picking Fran. Anyway, number 6, I'm going to go with Chris Holtmann here. I do think that the season has been really good, and I'm happy with the development of Bruce Thornton and Ronnie Gale. Felix Okpara, sleepy development player as well. I feel like he's done a good job. And maybe I'm just too biased about past seasons, but for me, the Penn State loss, it still just comes back to it. It's like, how did you let that happen? So I guess you could say the same thing about Chris Collins, but you know, he's got a little bit more hype for him, and I'm not as hard on him as I guess I am Chris Holtmann. So Russ, who's your number 6?
6 is where I have Chris Collins. Kind of like y'all said, it's tough to beat Purdue and be too low on this list. Chicago State loss it is tough, but when you're talking about 2 non-con losses going into conference play, if you can finish top 6 in the conference, you're pretty much guaranteed a tournament berth, and then it's a new season at that point. So,
yeah, very true. All right, who's your number 7?
At 7, I actually have Ben Johnson. It might be surprising, but I think it's more a result of I want to bet some other guys lower on the list. But he does have them at 9 wins. If he can create some of last year's, Penn State, Northwestern, Nebraska type magic, and somehow get to around 500 in conference play, they're going to be in the conversation for maybe a last 4 in team, I think, because you're going to have wins against Big Ten teams that will go dancing. So, I have Ben Johnson.
Yeah, no, Ben Johnson's been doing a good job this season. Definitely deserve that. I'm going to go off the wall here, but I just pick Mike Woodson for number 7. I know he's not everybody's guy, and I get that, but he's got some. What he's been able to do with Kalel Ware, I think, has been impressive. I mean, this was a guy that just looked like he went through the motions every single day at Oregon, had a hard time. And even though he doesn't show the most passion on the court, you can see a guy who has been developed better, who cares more. And I think that's a result of coaching in his case. Some of it has been difficult with Gabe Cupps. Gabe Cupps is a guy, if he was playing like Braden Smith was last year, Indiana would be doing a whole lot better. There's your Purdue praise for you again, Russ. But if he was even half of what Braden Smith was last year, this team would be doing a whole lot better. So I do have to ding him for not getting Gabe Cupps as ready as maybe he should be. But hey, IU's the only team in the conference with 2 conference wins and no losses. So, got to give them their flowers, right, Russ?
No comment.
All right, Spartan Dog, we'll go with you. Who's your number 7?
I'm actually going to put Fran here. I think in terms of what a team is, right? Iowa is an elite offensive team. Their offensive system is made to highlight players who can fill the stat sheet and put the ball in the bottom of the net. He's been able to identify talent, like Peyton Sandfort, and kind of develop him into a sharpshooter. The defense, again, a lot to be desired. And then number 8, I'll put Mike Woodson here. They are, like you said, JR, one of the only undefeated teams in conference play in the Big Ten through the first couple games here before Christmas. And I think that he does get a little grace based on his performance last year. I think last year was an impressive job coming in. Let's see if he can follow it up.
I agree. I think Mike Woodson deserves to be up there as well. I'm actually going to agree with Russ when it comes to number 8. I'm going to give it to Ben Johnson. You look at who this Minnesota team was last year going into this year. I don't think it's been a spectacular improvement, but it's been an improvement, and you have to give credit where credit is due there. So Ben Johnson. Russ, who's your number 8?
8, I actually have Mike Woodson. So we're kind of going back and forth, agreeing with each other, kind of in this range. They do need to maximize their potential, but he does have the pieces in place. They've shown it in flashes, and outside of getting thumped by Auburn, UConn and Kansas aren't bad losses, and they've won the other games they're supposed to win. It's just going forward, is he going to kind of improve and maximize that potential he's got in front of him?
I agree. All right, who's your number 9?
9, I actually have another surprise here. I've got Mike Rhoades. I'm going kind of based off of what expectations were and what he's been able to do. And, he's brought a lot of new pieces in there, and they've been able to, get to 500. They came back against a certain basketball team that I won't name to hurt your feelings, but you got to have some good coaching, keep your guys involved in a game to be down 18 points and come back and win a conference game like that. So, yeah, I got Mike Rhoades.
You can't hurt my feelings anymore, Russ. They're already hurt enough. I'm actually going to go with Steve Peichel for number 9. It's kind of a different reason, but the recruiting has just been on fire lately. And even though this Rutgers team hasn't been anything spectacular, they're 7-4, 0-1 in the conference. It's not been a fantastic year, but I mean, he's doing something really, really good on the recruiting trail, making things happen there. So I think you have to be impressed with that. We have. We have somebody telling us how stupid we are in the comments, so I'm not gonna give Gary the pleasure of being up on the screen. All right, Spartan Dog, who's your number 9?
I'll put Ben Johnson here.
Right.
500 at Minnesota is, it is what it is, right? By the way, Minnesota, I think, has one of the worst basketball courts in the country. That like millennial gray wood, Chip and Joanna Gaines looking wood,
and the fact that it's elevated, just set up to try to get dudes hurt. I mean, that's that's the floor that took out Robbie Hummel's knee and ruined the Baby Boilers' chance at a title. Yeah, I don't like it either. I'm with you.
Yeah, I hate the barn. And then number 10, I'll put Tom here. The only reason he's not lower is because he has kind of put it together here in the last couple weeks, but it has been a frustrating. It's been a frustrating 2020. It's been a frustrating fall for Michigan State fans overall, and we were kind of relative to expectations. I mean, Michigan State might be one of the runaway candidates for most disappointing team in the Big Ten. Just completely unable to shoot the three, insane lineup decisions, not riding hot hands, the committing to the auto bench when it's going to kill you. It's just been insane, but they have gotten it together. So that's why he's not lower. But if not, he would have been a lot low. He'd be a lot lower if it wasn't for the past couple of weeks. I'll say that.
The Baylor win definitely helps in a lot of regards. I still I won't have him that high. I'm actually going to go with Mike Rhoades next for a lot of the same reasons that Russ said. It's a tough team to try and work with, especially with Micah Shrewsbury leaving, all the seniors that left that team. But he brought in Ace Baldwin, who's been really good. Kanye Clark has made a lot of improvements, or has improved throughout the season and done a very good job. So I think you got to give Mike Rhoades his credit there. Russ, who's your number 10?
Yeah, at 10, I've got Steve Peichel. We're kind of going back and forth now, JR. It's the same reasons you said. It's the recruiting kind of bump. It's the on-court product maybe not has been as great. Starting with a loss to Princeton's not great, but to bring those recruits in, we'll see how good of a job he does keeping that class together. But you can't deny what he's done on the recruiting trail.
Mm-hmm. I agree. All right, who's your number 11?
11, I've got Fran McCaffery. We're getting into those coaches now that had maybe higher expectations. When you talk about that top guards list, to have Sanford and Perkins up there as 2 of the top 10 guards, and you got Krieke, you got McCaffery, you got Freeman as some of the better bigs and front court guys in the league. To be down there where you're at right now is it's not great. So
yeah, for sure. All right, my number 11, I said I wasn't going to put him at 10, but I'll put him at 11, is Tom Izzo. I do think we have to think about, just how difficult of a schedule it has been for Michigan State as well, and for his guys not to give up and not to, mail it in or anything like that, to come out as strong as they did against Baylor. I do think we have to give him credit there as well. I might be eating these words if they lose to Indiana State. However, I don't think they are. And I think at the end of the day, Tom Izzo, he's kind of doing what he always does. He has a really, really tough schedule going into it. Now Matt Painter had a really tough schedule too, and he's won his games. So obviously it can be done. However, at the end of the day, I do think we have to take that into account as well. All right, Spartan Dog, who's your number 11?
I'll put Peichel at number 11. I for the recruiting bump, right? I have not been impressed with Rutgers this year at all. I think they're setting the game back 100 years to the point where I almost expect them to play out of peach baskets and like real leather balls. But, recruiting has been on fire. If he's able to kind of innovate and find a primary score, he doesn't even have a primary score right now.
Mm-hmm.
So if he's able to kind of get that primary score, and then number 12, I'm going to go Mike Rhoades. I know that it's tough to win at Penn State, but you should be a little bit above you should be above 500 with the schedule that Penn State has had. They haven't played world beaters, and I think they're just kind of struggling with a lot of things right now that they just gotta get out of their system.
Yeah, no, I agree. Mike Rhoades has done a lot of good things, but he's also had some tough things as well. My number 12. Oh, who did I put? Oh, I put Juwan Howard for number 12. I do give him some grace because of what's going on with, the heart surgery and all that stuff and things like that. I feel like a guy who had heart surgery earlier, I can't put him last. And I have those two bottom spots reserved for another two guys that I think deserve it. So, at the end of the day, Juwan Howard, been tough this season for him, and he getting into a fight and punching your strength and conditioning coach obviously
allegedly.
But at the end of I guess the punch was allegedly, but yeah, at the end of the day, he's also not coached the whole season, so I don't think I can hold it against him too much. All right, Russ, who do you have for number 12?
So at 12, I actually have Kevin Willard. It's like I said, we're in that range of guys that had decent preseason expectations and are not living up to it. They weren't quite as high as some of the other teams, but they were expected to be in competition for a top 4 spot, at the very least, middle of the conference. But they've had a pretty poor start to the year, and like you said, just have that volume of shooting and not do well with it. Like, coaching's got to step in and figure something out at that point.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Who's your number 13?
So 13, this is where I've got Tom Izzo. Like you said, yes, they've had a tough schedule, but they were supposed to be right there with Purdue. Like, they were both top 5 teams, and Purdue went and won all those big games. And aside from Baylor, Michigan State went and lost all of those big games. And, a lot of the guys, their front court have not lived up to the potential this year so far. Like, they've looked better the last few games, and you're getting these all-star, McDonald American guys in there. You've got high expectations, and he's not performed so far, but there's plenty of time left, and he is supposedly Mr. March. Let's see if he's still got that in him, but it's not been the start that I think most Michigan State fans would have wanted.
Nope.
Tommy March.
Nope, not the start I wanted.
No.
I can attest to that.
My number 13 is Kevin Willard. There were a lot of things going into the season that I know Maryland fans were excited about. I was excited about for the Maryland program, and Willard just hasn't delivered. So, to me that's an indictment on him in a lot of those ways. A lot of what you said, the same, Russ. All right, Spartan Dog, who's your 13?
I have Kevin Willard here as well, JR. For all the reasons you and Russ have pointed out. I mean, I definitely think that he has not been living up to potential. He's not been maximizing his roster at all, and it showed in some of the results.
Yeah. So I assume last is Juwan Howard for you?
Last is Juwan Howard. I mean, you could even throw Phil Martelli in Juwan Howard / Phil Martelli, but look, like the reason, and I get what you're saying, JR, like the heart stuff, but the problems that Michigan has had for the last 2 years are still here, right? It's cultural.
Yeah.
And there's no one to blame for your culture but the head coach. I don't care whether he's getting up, whether he's standing up during the games or sitting on the bench. You're a head coach. Attitude reflects leadership, right? And they're unable to close big games. They get lazy on defense. And, we talked before the show, it's insane how cosmically connected Michigan basketball and MSU football is. I went through it all with you guys pre-show. It's for another time. But I think we're at the point now where we're at the end of the road with Juwan Howard. I can't believe he's still employed. Honestly, I really can't.
I think a lot of it goes back to, the legacy as a player and stuff like that. They don't want to fire him, and
there is no official legacy. Like
no, but
like that legacy is like it's not that it's not there. I mean, it's in the basement, but it's they can't display it publicly.
Right, but I mean everybody remembers it and everybody knows it though, So yeah, so we'll see. My last one obviously is a good old Fran McCaffery, and kind of some of the same stuff you were saying, Spartan Dog, about Juwan Howard, but like this is a very, very easy. I guess not easy. This is a very, very obvious thing to fix. Play defense. I mean, you lost at home to Michigan, which Spartan Dog was just talking about how Juwan Howard can't close games. Play defense. I cannot get over how Fran McCaffery, yes, you can develop these offensive players and do good things there, but you're 7-5. You're not playing defense. I cannot say enough bad things about Fran McCaffery and how I feel like he has just botched coaching this year and how bad it's been. So you and I are obviously at different wavelengths here, Spartan Dog, with Fran up at 7, me down all the way at the bottom. But I cannot see what he's done this season outside of developing some offense, which he does every single year. That's been very good. So he's
for Fran. There's an instructional DVD on Amazon called Building a Championship Defense. I think he needs to check out.
Fran would have a DVD player too.
Do you know who leads that workshop on building a championship defense?
Tom Izzo?
No, it's Fran McCaffery.
Oh, no, I didn't know.
That's good.
Oh, geez. Got me there. Good there, Spartan Dog. All right, Russ, your last one, Juwan Howard. Yes.
Yes, yeah. And to pile on Fran, I mean, you can't be in the Big Ten and not have a defense. It's better to have a defense and no offense than have offense and no defense in the Big Ten. But yeah, Juwan Howard, and it's still his program. So like you said, it could be Juwan/Phil, but I went through, and I don't know if we'll get to it, but I was going through some of the matchups with other Power 5 conferences to see how we stack up. And there's a lot of schools that, won some Power 5 games or Power 6 games, lost some, but you get to schools like Michigan that they've lost like almost every Power 6 game that they've played this year, outside of winning at Stanford, which great, that's going across the country and beating Stanford, but Stanford's lost to Santa Clara and Northern Iowa, like they're a 500 team. So, Michigan has just kind of embarrassed the Big Ten a lot this year, I think, on the national stage. And then you add to that the drama with Juwan Howard and getting in fights and with other coaches, with people within the staff. Like, I think it's just time for him to go.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, break up the relationships. Thanks for listening to the Big Ten Huddle. Please do like and subscribe. We appreciate that. If this was your first time listening, we are the Big Ten Huddle. We cover all things Big Ten football and basketball. We have a long episode every Sunday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night, all at 9 o'clock. So come in, check us out, get in the chat, let us know what you're thinking. We would love to have you join us and learn more about the Big Ten.